Hello again, America. My name is Guy Calisi, and this is the Older Bulls Podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that I feel very strongly about. And I just want to warn all of you out there that I may be all over the place, but I promise there is something of value here. So hang with me, if you will. My topic is energy and how it relates to the way in which we present to the world every single day. No matter what you think, you're constantly presenting to the world. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about a topic today that has nothing to do with this one, and it's going to be coming up, I think, my next episode, and that is men, don't be sloppy. I talked about it in a podcast before about being camera ready all of the time and how important it is to be presenting the best you to the world at all times. You never know who's watching, and I'm a teacher, so I am constantly on stage, and we all are, for better or for worse. It doesn't matter. But anyway, today's topic is going to be about energy and how it affects how it relates to the way in which we present in the world. Okay, so there are quite a few people out there, and you probably know some who have the gift of positive energy, and some are lucky enough to have a platform on which they can share it with the world, or at least a certain group of people. Life is controlled, I believe, by one force, and that force is energy. And I'm talking about this personal energy that we exude. So think about it. The most attractive people that you've ever seen, that you've ever met in your life. Now, I'm not talking about physically attractive. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people that you're drawn to, that have this magnetism. Ask yourself what it is that draws you to that kind of a person. And to me, it's energy, no doubt, hands down. Call it what you want: charisma, showmanship, personality, or charm. It doesn't matter. It's all about energy and how you exude or share that energy with the world. Now, here's a name for you: Tony Robbins. Those of you who know Tony Robbins, I think he's one of those people. What an incredible story. It doesn't matter whether you like Tony Robbins, whether you believe in him, whether you think that he's good, or what he does, is right, or he's a scammer. What's true is that his energy is undeniable. And what I mean is, when you listen to him, he's captivating. You can think he's a bullshitter, you can think, but you don't have to believe in his message. You don't have to be a follower. But just watching him, listening to his intonation, his body language, you're just mesmerized. Whether he is honest or sincere, my point is the energy which he exhibits. That's what I'm talking about. So it's the conviction and the commitment and his body language and tone that exude confidence and surety. I know a lot of you have gone to presentations, depending on what your line of work is. I have. I'm a teacher. I've been to lots of presentations. And the subject matter may have been very interesting, or at least you thought it was when you chose it as a seminar that you were going to sit in on, to listen to. And then you get there and the speaker is less than desirable. Again, I'm not talking about attractiveness. I mean no energy, no charisma. So the message is lost. In the last few years, I've made an incredible, with what may be, I'm not sure yet, the jury is out on it, sexist revelation. And that is truly only male speakers can motivate me or inspire me. And I've had this conversation with my wife, because I was just really, she actually agreed with me. She felt the same way, that she was more motivated by male speakers in our field and in fields in general. And I did my own research, just because I was so confused by it, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about myself. And so I did my own online research, listening to as many female speakers as I could. I talked to people. I said, who's a female speaker that just inspires you? And I talked to my female friends. I talked to my male friends. And I'm not saying that I wasn't inspired by some of the female speakers, but not as much as I was by the male speakers. And, you know, maybe that's a man to man thing. I don't know. You know, maybe it's a father complex that I have. I mean, it could be. I'm not going to rule that out. I know that men have been a big part of my life. So that has to have something to do with it. Teachers, coaches, uncles, grandfathers, dads in the neighborhood that had a big impression on me. I grew up in, you know, in a place where it was important for me. I'm talking about an emotional place where it was important for me to have men in my life. It's something about male energy, I guess. So what I want to say is that a message is a message, but it's 10 times more powerful when it's delivered with this magical energy that I'm talking about. So when it's delivered with vigor and enthusiasm. I mean, you can tell, I mean, somebody is jacked up about it, right? I mean, that is impressive. The energy is absolutely contagious, and the message becomes much more powerful, or at least has the potential to be, right? I mean, you can take this just like ridiculously mundane message and then add that charisma and that energy to it. I was getting excited. I'm knocking the microphone down. And it just changes everything. So that's what I'm talking about. It becomes riveting. It makes me sit on the edge of my seat. It's powerful, it's moving, it's inspiring, all of these words. We can always tell when somebody is doing what they love and love what they're doing. I think it's pretty rare in today's world that people, well, that people who are actually excited about what they do get to do what that is. It's lucky, or maybe it's not even luck. Maybe luck has less to do with it than just being brave, because maybe more of us could do it. We just don't have the courage to venture out and make it happen for ourselves. One of the highest compliments that I was ever paid was given to me by a visiting teacher a couple of years ago. I was explaining my vision of our adolescent program, and he stopped me in mid-sentence to say, have you ever thought about taking your show on the road? You are like the Tony Robbins of middle school teachers. And, you know, and I wasn't totally into Tony Robbins, but I knew who he was, and I listened to him, and he had a couple of great things that I heard. So, you know, it meant something to me. I believe that emotions are everything in life. That's why we need to master them. This is where most of our work in terms of self-improvement as human beings, as men, should go. They are worth putting hard work into, not just dabbling in, but making a commitment, a full-hearted commitment to making ourselves feel good by making connections with other people. And men, I'm talking about everybody in your life. So only through growing and connecting will we truly be fulfilled as men. I really think that the most emotional return on, well, the biggest return, and I think it's emotional, on the investment of this is mastering relationships. So to improve ourselves in the greatest way, in the greatest capacity, is mastering relationships, to get the most out of our lives, to do, to be, to give, to share. That's where it needs to be in our connection with people, our connection to the world, not just people, situations, whatever it is. Whatever you believe in, you need to live it. And you should lead to live it, and it should lead to growing in every sense of the word, emotionally, physically, in our relationships, our jobs, just as being better men. Growing and giving of ourselves is what we need to be doing. So we need more men, in my estimation, who are willing to set the standard by blowing themselves or lighting themselves on fire, blowing themselves up, or by lighting themselves on fire, and being an example for what the power of being your own man looks and feels like. It's unmistakable when it's true, when it's sincere. You can't fake it. People know when you're faking it. You can't fake it. Of course, this takes courage and a lot of practice. The only true disability in life is a bad attitude. I was in Minnesota with a friend of mine, Andy, and we went to this little pizza joint. We had ordered pizza and we went to go pick it up that serves beer there, but you can only drink the beer if you're ordering in. And I really wanted a beer. And I looked at the owner behind the counter and said, anyway, can I get one of those beers to go? Wink, wink. And he said, no, unfortunately, you have to drink it here. And I said to him, I can't do that. And he quickly, without even thinking, responded with not even batting an eyelash. He said, not with that attitude, you can't. And I just burst out into laughter. But he was right. All I had to do was change my attitude. And we could have just sat there. Andy and I could have just pulled up a chair if I really wanted to have that beer, and had the beer, finished the beer, and then could have been on our way. In my 54 years, I've come to realize that these little moments in time yield some pretty powerful messages, but we need to be present. And in order to hear it, and if you're not, you miss them. And those are the big ones. Those little teeny ones, they just blow themselves up. So it's just so very important. One of my teaching mentors, his name is Sanford Jones. He always used to tell me that when he was feeling down or in the dumps, he would focus on giving of himself, his time, his energy, his love, and his skills to others who were in a bad place or just needed somebody or something. Are we doing things that fulfill us as men, is my question. And I ask myself that all of the time, because we've got this, midlife crisis, and I don't want to think about it that way. I want to think about it as this midlife alive, feeling that we have. So it's just something that we should be thinking about all of the time. Are we asking ourselves that question? And I've come to realize that when I'm feeling in the dumps, I've done the same thing. So maybe we're not even asking ourselves this question, which is sad truly in itself. So are you in a midlife crisis, or are you in a midlife awakening? Be in the awakening. Be awake, be present. Make sure that you make each of those little small moments count, because so many of them just go right over our head and we're like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. So think about it. Think about it. So getting back to that energy thing that I was talking about, if you have it, and I think most of us do, it's a responsibility to share it, because everybody needs a boost and everybody needs to be lifted at some point. And when you are reaching out, you never know who you're going to touch or how deeply you're going to touch them. But one thing is for sure, that if you just think about it and you don't say the words, you're never going to touch anybody. And that's just sad. As men, we need to be inspired to be inspiring to each other. If you have greatness in you, find it and share it, no matter how small you think it is. It's going to be big to somebody else. So dig deep. There's no way that we can give of ourselves if our emotional cups are less than half full. I tell the teachers, when I do consultations all of the time, I go into their classrooms and I say that their energy, their mojo, dictates the energy of the classroom. There is all kinds of energy, and you need to be aware of the energy that you're giving off, whether it's positive, negative, a passive energy, an aggressive energy, a manic energy. Be aware of the energy that you give off, because that's the impression you're making on the world at that particular moment, and you will leave a mark, good or bad. I had a conversation the other night with one of my son's coaches who's been struggling, and I knew he was struggling, but that's not why I thought about what I was thinking about. He is all about attitude and mindset. He wants his athletes to be as intense and dedicated as he was, because that intensity and dedication got him to where he is today and got him through a whole lot of hardship in his life. His approach is very different than what most of these kids are used to. Probably a little too hardcore for them, if I'm being honest, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. Anyway, I went in, and first of all, he was in the ring, totally sweaty. I just walked up to him and I gave him a big hug straight away. He said, "You sure?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And I just want you to know that I appreciate your intensity. That's why I came in here tonight. I appreciate what you're doing for the athletes here. I appreciate what you're doing for my son. I too, in my life, have been misunderstood. My intentions have been good and pure, but also misunderstood. As long as you have your students' best interests at heart, you can't go wrong. So, my friend, you have to keep doing the things the way that you're doing them. And people will either understand or not. Some might take a little more time than others to understand, and others might just never be in the right headspace to get the message that you sent. But it doesn't mean that your message was wrong. Anyway, I gave him a big hug on the way out again. And that wasn't a message that I was going to be keeping to myself. It was important to me that he knew how I felt. Anyway, a couple of hours later, I'm in my basement, thinking about a podcast, and I get a text from him saying that my message tonight was a godsend. It was exactly what he needed at the exact moment. I was overwhelmed with emotion. All I did was what I knew was right and followed my heart, and I followed through on it, and I actually told him what I was thinking. I actually didn't care what he was going to think about my message. That wasn't my main concern. But when I found out how he felt, it just gave me that boost that I needed to keep on doing what I believe is right. And that is sharing those feelings with people when you're having them. Keeping them in, keeping them locked up doesn't do anything for anybody. So thank you, my brother. You helped me probably as much as I helped you. And that's what this thing called life is all about, men. Helping each other out. And sometimes that happens when we don't even know it. And it wasn't even our intention. And that is the purest of all intentions, giving something to somebody that you didn't even know they needed. We shouldn't be doing things just to be getting something back. The whole principle of reciprocity doesn't really fit in here with what I'm talking about. We need to put energy into the universe. When you shine your light where there is none, that's a special thing. There is no better thing to do. Inspire, motivate, love, push, influence, blow yourself up, and let other people watch you do it. That's what we need. Now, that means you're going to make a fool out of yourself sometimes, just because it depends on the audience. Not everybody responds to this energy in the same way, because some people just don't know how to handle it. That's what we need right now. At this time in history, at this time, we need inspiration to be great. Don't be a 5. There's too much mediocrity out there already. So, gentlemen, don't get swept up in it. Be better than it. Figure out who you are, who you want to be, and create a space for yourself and explode onto the scene. It can be messy, like I said, sometimes, no doubt, a psychedelic explosion all over the place. People might have to clean you up off the walls, but I think it's worth it. Let's get back into our general state of being. And that's what I was talking about originally. And I said this was going to go all over the place. So please just keep up with me. The general state of being that I was talking about at any given moment, how we feel, our state of being, how it determines how we present to the world. Each little snippet is meaningful. Every moment has meaning. If you're in a state of rage, let's say, we respond differently to people or situations than if we're in a state of playfulness. You know this. I'm not telling you anything new. Learning how to change our states in a particular moment will help us to move forward positively and to impact positively on the world so that we can create a positive presence and a positive influence. It's a lot of positives. What determines our state is our particular worldview. And when I say worldview, I really mean, how do you see yourself? Not your political worldview, that comes into it, but do you see yourself as a positive person or a victim, a loser? Does the world owe you something? You have to figure out what your worldview is, because that is affecting your message. If you have a negative worldview, you've got this negative mojo. And if you're wondering why people don't want to be near you, well, maybe that's the answer. Whether you know it or not, you're impacting the world with the energy that you're giving out. Okay. Our ability to make peace with others and the world is directly related to our capacity to make peace within ourselves. So if you have an internal battle going on all of the time, and you're pulling and pushing, and you don't know what kind of person you want to be and the kind of person that you are, and you're not listening, to yourself, it's a tumultuous time inside of you. And one other thing I want to say about this particular thing is, we can't hate ourselves into a version of ourselves we can love. So if you're feeling like you are not the person that you want to be, you need to think about that. That is incredibly important. We need to find our pace in the world. We can refer back to Tony Robbins, who I referred to earlier again, and he talks about these 6 human needs. He talks about certainty and security. Those two things go together. Uncertainty and the need for variety is what he said. So uncertainty, that means like not being 100% sure of things and needing variety. If you don't have variety and challenge in your life, what are you living for? Having significance in the world is another thing that he talks about. The need for love is very important. The need for growth and the need for contribution in your world or the world in general. All of us have the same list, and it's finding the balance between each of those things that differs for all of us. But your number 1 and 2 spots say a lot about who you are. Which are your 2 spots? Tony Robbins thinks that most of America, and maybe you younger bulls are more susceptible to this than the older bulls, but the 2 things that he says most Americans are susceptible to is significance, like the Instagram, Facebook, being liked, having followers, and certainty. So significance and certainty are the 2 things that he thinks that most of us are most likely to have in the 1 and 2 spot. So having these as number 1 and number 2 makes finding your authentic self very challenging as men. I'm not going to make any judgments because, I gave it some thought and I think about it and I waver on my 1 and 2. This is just for us to look at and evaluate and assess where we are right now. And then ask, is this where you want to be? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to end up? And then take the steps to get there. That's the hard work. So if we have security and significance as number 1 and number 2, in either order, it doesn't matter. What we're really saying about ourselves is that we care more about what the world thinks of us than what we think of ourselves. And for security, if your need for security is so great and you need to control things all of the time, there isn't going to be a whole lot of room for growth. Because in order to grow, you need to take chances. And taking chances means being uncertain. Being willing to be outside of your comfort zone at least 25% of the time, well, I think that's manageable. But it takes courage. A couple of things that I want to say about love. We all know Joe Rogan. Don't need to talk to you about who he is. He has a couple of podcasts on something called microdosing with psychedelic magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and a couple of other drugs of choice. And without going into all of the details, Joe really said on one of his guided journeys, somebody sits with you, you go through this whole 4-hour guided journey when you're on the psilocybin. He discovered that life is really all about love. Now you got to understand Joe Rogan's history. He's an MMA fighter, he's an actor, he's a comedian. I don't know if he's very funny. Giving and receiving love. is what Joe Rogan really broke it down to it. And I know it's a psychedelic thing, but it's true. Getting back to one of my previous statements, mastering relationships is really the most important thing that we can do as men. Being better partners, fathers, uncles, coaches, whatever it is your role in life is, developing relationships is how you get better at all of these things. I think it's easy to say and hard to do that we need to stop suffering by choosing to focus on something other than ourselves. Now, let's just be clear. Pain and suffering are not the same thing. Actually, Tony Robbins has a quote about this. He says something like, our brains were not designed to keep us happy. They were designed for survival. And that's why we are constantly looking for what's wrong in situations, constantly comparing things, seeing what's out of whack in our lives. Do people like us? Do we have enough money? Are my kids okay? Is my marriage good? We can always decide that we can change our states at any moment. And that's the power that we have. And you have to believe that you have that kind of control. We are in control of how we choose to deal with every life circumstances. And I believe that. I know there's a lot of people out there who say, oh no, there's these extenuating circumstances. No, I don't believe it. You have control over it. Are you willing or unwilling to do the things that you need to do to seize control of that? We can always decide to have a great time or not. We need to become aware of our emotional states at all times and make the most important choice of all, and that is to live life in the best possible state that we can all of the time. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to go through life, with rose-colored glasses on. It just means that you're making an effort to be positive, to have a positive impact in your world, regardless of how big or small it is. Greatness is achieved by one small act at a time, but it requires that you keep moving forward. If you find that people in your life have to behave a certain way for you to be happy, and then you find that they don't, and then you're unhappy, then guess what, folks? You're going to be unhappy. If you let other people or situations dictate your happiness, you're going to be disappointed more often than not. That's just the sad truth. Nobody or nothing should have control over our state of being at any given time. That doesn't mean that you don't get mad or that you don't have occasional blow-ups. We're human, and that happens. But it's about getting back to center. Okay, so you can go either way of center, but coming back is what you have control over. And making sure that those blowouts don't last very long, or that those moments of self-pity or those pity parties don't last very long. We need to feel loving and curious and passionate and alive. Just be. Let life pour over you and just feel it. Appreciate your moments, all of them, because life is made up of them and they all count for better or worse. Yes, they do. I honestly believe that. So start inspiring each other, but you need to start with yourself. Once again, America, that's how I see it, and I'm sticking to it. See you next time.